Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely level up your developer toolkit by diving into the incredibly powerful syntax upgrades of modern JavaScript, specifically ES6 and beyond. If you've ever looked at a modern JS codebase and thought, wait, is this even the same language I learned back in the day? Well, you're absolutely in the right place. We're not just looking at code today. We're going to break down exactly how these modern updates can make your daily programming faster, way cleaner, and honestly, significantly more powerful. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the ES6 Plus revolution. Then, we'll look at smarter variables with let and const. After that, streamlining with arrow functions. Then, organizing objects and arrays. Next up is the magic of destructuring. And finally, we'll review your newly upgraded developer toolkit. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the ES6 Plus revolution. Before we actually look at any code, we really need to define our terms here. So ES6 stands for ECMAScript 2015. You can kind of think of this as the great dividing line in JavaScript history. It was this massive industry-wide standardization effort designed to fix some really long-standing developer headaches and just streamline the language for modern web apps. See, legacy JavaScript was incredibly flexible, but as you might know, that flexibility often led to unpredictable bugs and super bloated files. ES6 and all the updates that came after it that we collectively call ES6 Plus, well, they gave developers a highly refined set of tools to write code that isn't just functional, it's genuinely elegant and predictable. Move in right along to Section 2, Smarter Variables with Let and Const. Okay, so in legacy JavaScript, you pretty much declared everything using var. But var had this really nasty habit of leaking out of its intended scope. It caused those incredibly frustrating errors where a variable you thought was totally isolated suddenly overwrites something else entirely. It's the worst, right? Well, modern JavaScript entirely sidesteps this issue. By tossing out var and replacing it with let and const, you instantly bring strict, predictable boundaries to your data. It's a real game changer. To break it down, think of let as a reusable box. You put a value in it, take it out, reassign a new value later. It's perfectly flexible for data that actually needs to change, like, say, a counter in a loop. On the flip side, think of const as a locked safe. Once you assign a value to a const, that's it. It cannot be reassigned. This is incredibly useful for configuration settings or things that just have to stay static throughout your app. But here's the absolute best part. Both of them are strictly block scoped. That means they are safely confined right to the specific curly braces they were created in, so no more leaking variables and no more unpredictable behavior. Next up, Section 3, Streamlining with Arrow Functions. Did you know you can actually shrink a bloated legacy function into a really sleek arrow function in just 3 simple steps? First off, you completely remove the actual word function. You literally just don't need it anymore. Second, you add this elegant little equal sign and greater than symbol, which developers affectionately call the fat arrow, right after your parameters. And finally, step 3, if your function is just doing one simple calculation and returning it, you can entirely remove the curly brackets and the return keyword. The language now implicitly understands what you're trying to do. It's so clean. Just look at the difference here. Traditional functions are bulky, right? They take up multiple lines with all this boilerplate text just to perform a basic action. But the ES6 Plus arrow function, it distills that exact same logic down to a single, beautiful line of code. When you're writing a program with hundreds of small functions, this transformation dramatically reduces your visual clutter. It lets you focus on the actual logic of your app rather than getting bogged down by the heavy syntax of the language itself. Let's keep moving to Section 4, Organizing Objects and Arrays. ES6 Plus gets rid of an immense amount of unnecessary boilerplate code when you're managing objects and arrays. Back in the day, if you wanted to build an object using variables that had the exact same names as the object's keys, you had to type them out twice. It was repetitive and, honestly, super prone to typos. Well, modern JavaScript recognized that redundancy. Now, if your variable name and your object key match, you just type it once. The language automatically makes the connection. It seems like a tiny change, but when you're dealing with massive state objects or huge arrays of data, these streamlined shortcuts save you an immense amount of typing and keep everything looking incredibly tidy. Which brings us to Section 5, the magic of destructuring. So imagine you're dealing with massive, complex objects and arrays, like pulling a heavy payload of user data from a server API. How do we efficiently extract exactly what we need without writing endless lines of code? If you need a user's name, email, and location from this deeply nested object, traditional JavaScript forces you to dig into that object, step by step, line by tedious line. It takes forever and makes your code incredibly long. Well, the answer to that problem is destructuring. This is an ES6 Plus feature that acts exactly like unpacking a suitcase. Imagine you arrive at a hotel, and instead of digging through all your folded clothes to find your toothbrush and your phone charger, you just wave a magic wand and those two specific items instantly appear on the counter. That is literally what destructuring does for your code. It lets you pull specific items out of arrays and objects cleanly and instantly, leaving the rest of the data safely packed away. The old method of extracting data line by line is basically obliterated by a single line of destructuring syntax. In the legacy approach, you have to declare a variable, point it to the object, define the key, and then repeat that whole song and dance for every single piece of data you want. It's exhausting just to look at. But with ES6 Plus destructuring, you simply open up a set of brackets, list the keys you want to extract, and set it equal to the object. Boom. Done. In one highly efficient, elegant line, you've grabbed multiple data points simultaneously. I'm telling you, it is absolutely one of the most satisfying features to use in modern JavaScript. All right, let's wrap this whole thing up. Section 6, your upgraded developer toolkit. You are now fully equipped to write code that is safer, faster, and just so much more readable. You've got precise variables with let and const, making sure your data stays exactly where you put it without leaking scope. You have clean actions through arrow functions, stripping away that bulky old syntax to leave you with pure logic. You have modern ways of organizing data within objects and arrays that totally eliminate redundant typing. And finally, you have the ultimate extraction hack, destructuring, letting you unpack complex payloads with just a single line of code. Together, these aren't just minor updates, right? They represent a fundamental shift in how professionals write JavaScript today. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Understanding these tools conceptually is really just the first step. I challenge you right now. Open up your current projects, take a hard look at your files, and ask yourself, which legacy var declarations can become a let or a const? Which bulky functions can you shrink into sleek arrow functions? And where can you replace tedious data extraction with one elegant line of destructuring? The tools are right there waiting for you. Get in there and start upgrading your code today.